In Goal Radio, the podcast. Glad to be with you again. Darren Millard, along with the co-founders of In Goal Magazine, David Hutchison and Kevin Woodley. We got some stuff coming at you. A workhorse for a short while in the National Hockey League, but an extensive career worldwide. Going back to one of my wheelhouses in my career in the National Hockey League, Cristobal Huet is going to stop by in our feature interview. We also have our gear segment, the PX3 line with True and Kevin Woodley and Cam talk all about that as we bring you in with the co-founders. They're standing by. They're ready to rock. They're all excited. I love it because Hutch does this whole warm-up like he's scraping the crease, and it's really cool to watch as he gets into it before he settles into his mic. And Woody's the man that's just jumping around thinking, how do I narrow down my talk about the hockey shop into like 30 or 40 seconds because you've got so much to say.
Impossible. And I will say, I think my tease for the hockey shop this week is basically just going to be to go watch the video on the True PX3, because as much as we have the audio on it, it doesn't do justice to the video. All the different colors, all the different patterns. They didn't just get in a bunch of white and a bunch of black. They got some really sharp sets, the kind of sets that if you were a fan of the Vancouver Canucks, you'd like to wear, a fan of the St. Louis Blues, some really yellows and blues and oranges and all kinds of colors that pop. Cam has you well supplied. And of course, as you're going to hear in the gear segment, he has the answers to your question about what PX3 is all about, where it fits, who it doesn't fit. Real important, folks. If you want well, we'll let Cam explain. That's why we go to them. That's why we go to them for their expertise, for their selection, for the latest and the greatest. And now that includes, we've unveiled sort of some of the arrivals of the offshore versions of 12.2 and 20.2 from True. And now we've got the made in Canada, in Montreal, Lefebvre PX3 in store for you now at the Hockey Shop and online at thehockeyshop.com.
Can't wait for the gear segment. And Hutch, I'm curious because I can't tell where the net is when you're doing your little crease warm-up before you step in front of the microphone. Are you a guy that scrapes the crease parallel to the goal line, or do you go horizontal to the goal line beside it? I'm really looking into this. How do you scrape that crease?
He just has to pee.
Best drop in
now what
ever.
do I say? Now what do I say? I'll just sit here and be a victim. You guys just go at me. Just go at me.
There's an account out of Winnipeg. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but they
Goalie
always
dance,
show
Winnipeg goalie dance, I think.
Yeah, where they show guys come in and do their crease scraping and their pre-period warm up every time, and it's really neat to watch. Both National Hockey League guys, a lot of Western League guys. Milic was in there actually the other day, and it's neat to watch the variety of guys before they come out for the start of the second period.
That's awesome. I look forward to seeing that.
That's really good, and that's what your warm up reminded me of.
All right. Maybe my office chair warm up will be featured on Winnipeg Rink crease scraping, whatever the name of the account is.
It's Winnipeg goalie dance, and I can't believe you didn't know about it. You're definitely gonna have to check.
I swear I haven't seen it.
Yeah, big shout out to them. Hey, we got some all stars coming in. We'll get to all the additions.
I want to hop in though. Speaking of big shout outs, our last guest, Thomas Milic, got a nice little shout out at the Vancouver Canucks game the other day. Like within days of us interviewing him, posting the interview, he attended a Canucks game, honored on the scoreboard, gold medal, World Junior Championship winner. And I got to say, and this is perhaps an indictment of the local hockey team as well, wearing a Luongo jersey to boot. Gotta love that. Probably the loudest ovation of the night. The local, as I said, hockey team hasn't given the fans much to cheer about of late, but got a massive cheer. So it was kind of cool to see, right after we talked to him, he got some love from the crowd here in Vancouver. Ran into him there, handed off some in-goal swag in the down in the concourse area, and literally had people just recognizing him before he was introduced on the Jumbotron, coming up and thanking him for what he did for the country for winning a World Junior Gold medal. It was kind of cool to see that, to just sort of, I was handing him some stuff and like random people were just coming up and thanking him for what he did. I was like, that's pretty cool.
I think it's pretty neat that he wears the jersey to the game too. That's awesome. Like he goes from World Championship final to being a fan and wearing a jersey.
Luongo jersey, baby. You got to represent.
He said Lou was his guy. He said Lou was his guy in the interview, didn't he?
He did that.
You know, if it was me, I would have been wearing my World Junior jersey.
With my medal.
Yeah, full cheese ball. I would have gone full cheese.
A sign, like a sandwich board saying, I'm a world champion. I just won the gold medal.
I probably would have had a T-shirt made up.
We had a jersey retirement of Ryan Miller's the other night with the Buffalo Sabres. That was a really cool and well-deserved moment. And for a franchise that really did, I know he started with Chicago, but launched Dominik Hasek into the National Hockey League stardom. Ryan Miller owns the record book with the Buffalo Sabres.
He was a dominant goaltender then. I remember writing back in a previous iteration of my life, it got me started with writing about goaltending and learning about goaltending for Goalie News. The Lockout edition, one of the magazines we did, the cover story was Ryan Miller, American Hockey League Goalie of the Year, sort of next, the next big thing in the NHL. So 04-05, which tells you how old I am. And then got to build I always loved him coming through when he came through town because he just loved to talk goaltending. And then when he came here and played in Vancouver for 3 years, like it was like an education on the position. Anytime I had questions, he had answers, and I usually had to ask him to slow down so I could figure out exactly the level of detail that he was going into. Like he's the kind of guy, he gave an answer and you couldn't just nod along. You had to really think about it because a lot of thought had gone into it on his end. And beloved in Buffalo, had all that success there, Vezina Trophy, a lot of playoff success for that franchise, and really cool to sort of see that ceremony, to see that the end of it as the banner goes up in the rafters and he's there with his young family and his wife. And it's, I don't know, just, I love those things. I'm I'll soapbox it and say we need one of those here in Vancouver for Roberto Luongo. I wish they would change their mind on that, but I just love events like that when a guy is as connected to the city as Ryan Miller was to Buffalo.
Played 3 full years in Rochester before he came up. And there was a real contradiction at the time, Hutch, whether he should have been brought up faster or not. But in the end, the proof is in the results.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to look back and decide what you should have done. I think a current American goaltender example of the same would be Thatcher Demko, wouldn't it be? As somebody who's sort of overcooked in the American Hockey League, and we'll always have that debate over whether one should be taking extra time to hone their game or maybe thrust into the spotlight a little bit earlier, as a few more guys are starting to be. Definitely worked for Miller, though. He was one of my favorites, guys, growing up. It's interesting that we've got Cristobal Huet on today, because I think for similar reasons, I really loved watching both of their games. I enjoy guys who are technicians who have a whole lot of structure to their game. And it's not that they can't be incredibly athletic, but that's sort of what stood out to me for both of these guys. And I don't know, it's funny listening to the interview that Huet might not see himself that way as you listen to him talk about how his game is different than goaltenders today. But certainly at the time, when I watched him, the structure in his game really stood out for me, and I really admired it.
Yeah, there's not many that thought the game as deep as Ryan Miller. I think of Craig Anderson, who can read releases and seems to know what's happening beforehand. But Ryan Miller, and then you get to the equipment fact as well.
Yeah.
Oh, how good are those pro reads he's done for Woody too? I mean, just the depth he goes to on everything. We're just so lucky. I think Woody, you're gonna have to look back into the archives now and maybe get a few more from him, because there's still going to be a lot of lessons for goaltenders out there listening to somebody as deep thinking.
I think we
got
to give him a little break. I'm bugging that guy all the time, quietly behind the scenes with text messages, questions here, questions there. He's such a great voice. So when you're speaking on issues around the league or around the position, he's a guy I lean on perhaps a little too heavily at times for quotes and stuff. So we'll let him enjoy this moment, but it's a good idea.
Yeah, don't forget him being the goalie representative on the competition committee, right?
That's exactly true.
Exactly. Yeah. And
roundabout when the big gear changes were happening.
And he's also got a voice in that process, I believe, now. Like, he started to get involved with the National Hockey League in terms of some of their committees and some of their some of the things they have going on behind the scenes with Kay Whitmore, in terms of, goalie equipment and making sure goalies are protected and stuff like that. So I would assume he'd be a welcome voice on any of those types of issues, because he knew his equipment as well as anyone. Like, man, like he knew his way around a sewing kit too, right? Like he could do the repairs himself. I witnessed him. He's a guy that changed, and this is interesting. We're going to have this in a gear segment coming up. He's a guy that would change his blocker board somewhat regularly. I'm not sure Joe average goalie realizes just how damaged that blocker board gets inside your blocker, and how as it gets misshapen with all those repeated impacts that might affect your ability to perfectly steer one into the corner. So he regularly switched out his blocker boards, and just the way he thought the game, Darren, like, I'm not even sure the pro reads do justice, because to me, he was one of the last guys that would set people up, right? Like, not everything was about square and centered all the time. Like, he would bait guys. He would, put himself in a position to encourage. If he wanted to pass, he would set it up to encourage that guy to pass on whether it was an odd man rush or a situation down low. Like, there was an element of, I'm going to show you something. And I don't just mean like, I'm going to show you glove and take it away. I mean more sort of how he positioned himself, how he moved to set guys up to make the play that he was hoping they would make, or set them up knowing that play was coming and being prepared for it. And some of that comes through in his pro reads, but I'm not even sure you can do justice to. It's kind of a bit of a lost art, right? He may have been the last guy that sort of played like that. Maybe Craig Anderson as well, but it's a pretty short list.
Another person from his era, Cristobal Huet, coming up in our feature interview brought to you by Sensorino. We'll get to Woody and Cristobal in just a little bit, but the All-Star additions were announced last week. I want to make sure that we acknowledge the guys that were added to the team via fan voting, and we've got the likes of Stuart Skinner, another rookie. Pacific Division has 2 rookies going with Logan Thompson. UC Saros is joined by Vezina Trophy winner Connor Hellebuck, and in the Atlantic Division, you've got a couple of guys that are really, really impressive in Linus Allmark and Andrei Vasilevsky, and Igor Shesterkin and Ilya Sorokin from the Metropolitan. Hutch, who you taking as your tandem if you're going to select one to win it all?
Pretty hard to go away from Allmark and Vasilevsky, isn't it? I mean, if you just sort of look at that board and say who are guys that stand out, I mean, Vasilevsky being the incredible acrobat, his ability to steal a game stands out, and then Linus Allmark, who's sort of running away with everything this year. So hard to go against those, but I'm going to be watching Sorokin and Shesterkin because, I've always been a Sorokin fan. And I'm thinking if they're smart in the wide open 3-on-3 game, we could see a little bit of extra puck handling from Shesterkin. A guy who loves to sling the biscuit, and could be interesting to see if they know how to use him properly. And that's always fun. So I love puck handling goaltenders. So I'm going to go with those 2 as the ones that I would like to see do well.
Ooh, threw the monkey wrench in there with the puck handling. Hadn't even thought of it. And Shesterkin can chuck it. And so efficient and smart with his reads on that. Ooh, I like that one. Honestly,
they should throw out the rule about not being able to touch the puck on the other side of center, by the way. I mean, that in the game period, but I'd love to see him skate up ice with it.
Why does that rule even exist? I know it's an old rule. It's grandfathered, yeah.
I guess back when, is it old enough that it's back when goalies were barely goalies? They were just like players with cricket pads on or something. But then, like, if you're going to take the risk, take the risk. It's a ridiculous rule.
Doesn't make any sense now. They get rid of it. It's just taking up ink in the record book right now.
I mean, the odd time you'll see that penalty called, right, is a guy's making the long change in the second period. And
I
sort
just
of
remember Juan making the rush.
Puck, but
that's the only time it really comes up.
Unreal.
100%. That's a moment that stood out for me.
Stuart Skinner and Logan Thompson, 2 rookies as a tandem.
Incredible. Yeah, and like when we talk about like I don't know that you can pick a style that necessarily works for an all-star game for 3-on-3, but Logan Thompson's got that battle to him. He's got that I think there's an element of unpredictability, and I say that in a positive way in Logan's game. Like, it doesn't always look the same, and I wonder if he might have a little fun out there in a 3-on-3 environment as well. I could see that. Him and Stewart are like, it's funny, like 2 rookies, yes, and pretty. I don't know if that's unprecedented off the top of my head, but I'm guessing it's a pretty short list of times we've seen that. But 2 guys who also play the position or have success in very different ways. Like, Stewart is a very well structured, efficient goaltender, and Logan's got a lot more flair and read and sort of flow to his game compared to Stewart. One's a little more outside in, and Stewart's very much goal line out. So that'll be interesting to watch them as well. I'm excited for both of them. It's a great opportunity, and yet, like as goalies, like you're honored. But I've talked to a lot over the year that are like, oh man, like that is like the cream of the crop offensively with no checking in a wide open 3-on-3 environment. Like that is tough.
I think the underreported part of this is that the Pacific Division is going with 3 goaltenders because nobody's picked up on it that it's Logan, it's Stewart, and then Stuart Skinner's mustache is the alternate goaltender. Like that thing deserves an appearance fee in its own.
That it is.
Darren, you going to start a new Twitter account? Stuart Skinner's mustache?
It's outstanding.
It is 1970s classic.
Stuart's in here in Vancouver here for a game against the Canucks, and like I'm thinking of shaving my whole beard just because of the shame. All my facial hair will just feel shame standing next to him and talking to him.
True story. I thought it was Glenn Anderson the first time I saw him.
That's good. That's good.
Slightly beefier version.
It was unbelievable the way it jumped out. No, good for him with 2 rookies, and that is unprecedented. The last rookie voted to play in an All-Star game was John Gibson, and it hasn't happened with 2 rookies in this format. It's unbelievable what we've got going here. Cristobal Huet is waiting in the green room, so Cristobal, we'll get to you in just a second. But the gear segment brought to you by The Hockey Shop. TheHockeyShop.com, source for sports Langley. We're dealing with the True PX3.
Welcome back to The Hockey Shop, source for sports. We're here in the goalie corner, Cam's crease, whatever you want to call it. Still working on that. I prefer goalie utopia. And it is somewhat utopic today because we have the new, it's January, but it's Christmas at the Hockey Shop.
That was a stretch.
We got new.
That's a stretch.
We got new gear. New gear. Catalyst PX3 from True. We've teased this. We've talked about it. You've seen it at the National Hockey League.
Mm-hmm.
Cam now has it in store. Made at the factory in Montreal by the Lefebvres. Cam, walk me through the PX3. I got a cool little origin story to tell you in terms of some of the development of this pad and the role Freddie Anderson played in it. But just let's go over the feature.
Well, features. Like, the biggest feature. So behind me, I happen to have a 12.2 L87. So that's just the retro graphic. But why I have this pad here is that if we look, thigh rise, quite important. So 12.2, still quite thick up top. Now, Kevin takes that wonderful St. Louis-inspired set that he's got sitting in front of him there. If you can figure it out, there we go. Turns it towards the camera. You can see how that thigh is quite a bit thinner. Main benefit here, you're in a deeper, lower, wider stance. You're having those pad tips coming in front of each other and cross. Having that thinner thigh rise allows that dominant leg still to come in front without that pad binding and smacking into each other. So it's allowing, again,
less pad interference.
Correct. Especially as you're pushing around, lower, deeper stance, that's where you're going to find its biggest benefit. So that's one of the key features.
And before we move on to the other key features, origin story time. Freddie Anderson, Carolina Hurricanes, was playing in pads that were a little shorter than his maximum height. Has been for years. Dating back to his days in Bauer, he would actually have them make them smaller than his max allowable. And I've actually had him demonstrate this in the locker room when he was in the Leafs doing carpet flies, showing me how the shorter pads still close the 5-hole perfectly. But that's an ideal butterfly. The reality of goaltending is we're not always in an ideal butterfly. So it's in those moments where you're extended, where the pads aren't perfectly together, where you're moving, where you don't want to lose that inch and a half, or 2 inches of coverage that you can have. The answer, courtesy of True, was to thin out the top of the thigh rise and get him comfortable with it. Now, one of the issues that arose in the early versions was it was too floppy. And Freddie actually got a camera out and videoed as the goalie coach shot pads off the thigh rise to show how much movement there was. So again, I love this because it's pro feedback leading to product innovation and product design improvements. What did they do? They reinforced the thigh rise. And so in addition to being thinner, this baby is stiff.
Oh, yeah.
So from the knee up, if you're looking at this pad, like when we talk about style of play and preferences, and I gotta be honest, in the National Hockey League, the most common pad profile these days is softer boot, stiffer from the knee up, and that's what we're seeing here. Relatively straight or fairly straight, very stiff knee up. But again, the beauty is you're not going to get that sort of trap door where it hits the thigh rise on a thinner thigh rise and allows the puck to get through.
Correct. And that's what we kind of want to drive home here a little bit is obviously, again, as Kevin pointed out, that stiffness that is existing above that knee. But you're still obviously getting that soft boot. So, 12.2 wears, you're still going to have a familiar feeling pad basically through and through. What you're really going to notice, though, again, that less of that fold, less of that flex up top. The 12.2 can already be a stiffer pad above the knee, depending on how exactly you set it up on the customizer itself. But this is something...
This is another level of stiffness?
Yeah, I would put it as another level of stiffness. That's the best way to describe it.
Quick question for you, because these ones are all from the knee up relatively straight.
Correct.
Is there a pre-curve option that you can get where you can have this stiffness with a little bit more of that traditional sort of rounded top?
Now, you don't want to see, this is one of the things, though, is that you don't want to soften up this pad too much, or you're going to run into that issue of that trap door. So, no, to answer your question. Again, this isn't a pad that all of a sudden...
like this is like, and this is just, for people that are like trying to figure out where this pad fits.
Correct.
If you want that more of a sort of rounded pre-curved top, there are other options for you.
You want a double break, you want something softer like that, back to the 12.2. Okay,
Right.
So there are still some more features.
Let's go into the other features. My apologies. I sidetracked us with story time with Kevin.
No worries. So actually, starting with the knee flap itself, trim down and actually something that's a little bit better. So if you do strap up to behind your knee, that will wrap around the back of your knee a little bit easier rather than being the rounded block, which we've seen on previous iterations of the pad itself. Whereas this can bind up and catch a little bit. This tucks behind the knee a little bit easier. Allows that still to get that good wrap, but without that interference level that you potentially get from that basically round dome, almost bagel shape, we'll call it.
And of course, if you want to strap it down around the calf, that's there too.
Pencils have erasers. These are removable.
Pencils have erasers.
There you go. Okay. Fast rotation strap. Okay, some changes here. Most notable change from, say, the 20.2 to this. We do find that fast rotation strap, now on the inside of like your side surface and whatnot, we're finding that fast rotation strap coming down almost to basically the ankle of the skate. So creating a little bit more wrap to the pad, a little bit more connectivity, especially in that down low.
Now the strap position is the same. It's just got an extension down on the inside of the leg. So
Correct.
You're not actually tightening that section. It's just an extension.
No, but even that level of connectivity, we call it that like safety blanket feel, for example. So if you're looking for a little bit more wrap, also feeling that pad as you're, sliding through or setting into your stance and having that feel of, at least something being there. Once again, it's just something that's been kind of added and worth calling out. So now for super scientific measurement time, just out of wonderful curiosity, how much thinner is that thigh rise? So, on a 12.2, we can even go inches, we'll call it just a little over 2 inches. And this is a 33 plus 2 pad here. So, again, okay, well, I got this one right here. Ooh, just slightly about 1.5 inches. So, it's almost a 1/2 inch thinner in the upper thigh portion of the pad.
So again, less interference when you're dropping into the butterfly, less likelihood that the pads are going to hit each other and cause problems. Chances are if you do have a little bit sort of overlap, the pad will still get to the ice without causing interference. So that's one of the big thoughts behind that. I imagine it probably cuts a little bit weight. We don't have a scale in front of us to tell you exactly how much, but it feels like that's not the primary focus here.
No. I would agree on that aspect. One other quick note. Gloves. So if you liked the 20.2 and the 12.2, the good news is the gloves haven't changed. They're the exact same thing, just new graphic. Obviously, you can still order 600, 580, 590, whatever your preference is. Get a nice 580 here in front of me here. I also got a 590 sitting over there. Once again, like it's whatever you want in terms of for ordering custom. That's all based off of preference. You can always talk about that on the phone, 604-589-8299 or 1-800-567-7790. You want to chat about the PX pad, gloves, what break angle is right for you. Is this thinner thigh rise going to work for me? We can chat about it.
And if you want to find all these options online, check them out at thehockeyshop.com. All the different colorways that they have, as Cam said, they've got different break angles on different gloves with different colors. In stock now, hockeyshop.com, PX3, live, ready to go. You want to come in and do some carpet flies like Freddie Anderson in the actual pads he was wearing at the start of the season. This is the place to be. Goalie Corner with Cam. Thanks for walking us through the PX3.
Thanks, Cam.
Was there a part of that experience with Cam, Woody, that leaves you more impressed than anything else?
Do we need to pump his tires that much? Like, I don't know. I always enjoy my time with Cam. Just kidding. And it was pretty cool. I was going to throw somebody else under the bus here from the hockey shop because they were bringing out, these literally just arrived. So they were bringing out an extra set, different colors, right? Just to sort of all the different colors. And one of the staffers was sliding the box along the board and he hit sort of the skate section where they got the rubber floor. And I guess there's a ridge there. And the whole box just disintegrated and opened like it was like a surprise package, but because he was pushing it with speed as the box blew up, all of a sudden there was just all these pads and this staffer doing like the slide along the floor as we're trying to set up. They got so much PX3, they couldn't get it out for us fast enough. So always a good time talking gear with Cam. And we've got some, there's going to be a couple lulls here. We got some more new equipment coming in a couple weeks. But we're going to start getting into some other topics, things that are a little more, evergreen, not necessarily just new gear. We talked about masks. We're going to get into gear repair, relacing gloves, all the different services that they do there, repairing skate cuts. What can you do where you kind of just SOL, toe bindings, all the things that Cecil and his crew do there beyond skate sharpening. Plus, we're going to get into blade profiling and some of the unique custom radiuses, goalie specific, that you can get from the hockey shop. So always fun talking with Cam, but sometimes you pump up his ego. Now I got to go talk to somebody else about all the things they do. So we'll check out Cecil and the sharpening in the near future too.
Cristobal Huet coming up in just a little bit. He'll make his way into our In Goal Radio, the podcast studio. But first, a word from Sensorina, Hutch.
It is going to be a really cool week, boys. Get your Sensorina headsets out. Check out what's new. We teased it last week. It is now live. The Winter Classic outdoor rink is available in Sensorina. You want to get out there, be amongst the mountains, the outdoors of, I think it's the Lake Tahoe rink, isn't it? You can go out there and train in just the most incredible setting for hockey. It's spectacular. And to celebrate adding the Winter Classic outdoor rink, and don't forget the NHL shooters that were recently added, Sensorina's got a competition coming up starting Monday, the 23rd of January. For 14 days, there will be 14 drills. Get out there every day, participate in the competition drills, and there is over $3,000 worth of prizes being awarded by Sensorina. The outdoor rink is available until the 21st of February to every user. And after that, it's going to just be there for the pro users. And that's just sort of to highlight that there are now 3 different packages if you want to get into Sensorina in a way that's maybe a little bit more affordable. One, of course, is the new 7-day trial. So it doesn't cost you anything to try Sensorina if you already have the Oculus headset. They've got a slightly more affordable $29 subset of drills if you want to get out there and do that training and take advantage of it. And then if you want, of course, the full meal deal, it's the $49. I think it's US dollars we're talking here. That will have absolutely everything right up to the NHL shooters and now this outdoor rink. But it's all available for everybody right now. Go check it out. Get involved in the competition starting this Monday. See if you can keep up with Darren.
Yeah. Compare with me, please. and we'll see how good you really are, because I'm not lying. I'm pretty darn good.
Darren Millard faces NHL shooters all the
Exactly.
time. This is nothing for
I
him.
mean, let's really put it on the line. I'm
You know what?
awesome.
You know where I'm going to dominate this drill? Dominate.
Where?
I'm going to do the Eric Comrie version where you just sit there and watch pucks go by you.
And have a perfect score.
Perfect score.
0 for 10. 0 for 10. 0 for 10.
And-
Reaction time 0.
And then when he accidentally,
I'm working on something here, guys.
and when he accidentally stops one, he's gonna start over. He's God darn it.
Crap, do it again.
It ruined it. I love this conversation with Cristobal Huet because underappreciated, both in style and his kits. His looks were awesome. I loved the way he worked his way around the net, and a long career. Woody, I love this. When you told me that you were going to talk to him, I was really envious.
Yeah, and then we'll get into he's going, and the reason we talked to him, I think I don't know if we've even touched on this yet. Like, he's been inducted into the IIHF Hall of Fame, which is quite the honor. And yes, the NHL career wasn't as long, but the things he did internationally, especially at the World Championships for France, are so impressive. And we'll get into some of the numbers as we talk to him, some of the, like, how long he played up till age 42. And of course, we probably should have mentioned that he's goalie coach now in the Swiss League of Lausanne. So, real chance to bring sort of updating the position technically. And it was interesting to talk to him about some of the things that translate tactically, technically still, but also just the mindset things that he learned. Like, he's such a chill, relaxed guy. I think he comes by that very naturally. So how do you help teach that to others now that he's on the coaching side of things? So we went down a lot of different paths, a lot of different roads. He's a guy that I agree with you, Darren. I think there's probably people that didn't watch, if you weren't a fan of the NHL when he was in it, underappreciated is probably a good word, because he was a really good goaltender when he was here. And I just think it's been a while, so people may have forgotten that a little bit. But he had a hell of a career both here and overseas, and has some really good thoughts on the game and the position that he shared with us.
Broke in with Los Angeles, spent a significant time in Montreal, a pit stop in Washington, and finished off with Chicago, and had great looks all the way along. It is Cristobal Huet, French, and in the IIHF Hockey Hall of Fame, soon to be on In Goal Radio, the podcast. Our feature interview brought to you by Sensorino.
Really excited to welcome to the In Goal Radio podcast, first time guest, a voice from the past for me, somebody I haven't talked to in years. He probably remembers me with all the annoying questions when he was coming through town here in Vancouver back in his days with Los Angeles, the Montreal Canadiens, the Chicago Blackhawks, Cristobal Huet. Cristobal, thanks so much for joining us. And first off, congratulations being inducted this May to the IIHF Hall of Fame. That's an incredible honor. How you feeling about that?
Hi, Kevin. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I mean, it's a great honor. Obviously, I've been playing a lot of World Championship, and my class is pretty good too with Zetterberg and Brian Leach too. It's pretty an honor to be associated with those guys, and I'm actually looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun.
And the event, it's probably fitting that the event and the ceremony itself ties into the World Championships. An event that you made your own for so many years. Yeah.
I've been over almost not almost actually 20 years. I've been spending a lot of times with the national team. When you're part of a small country, hockey country, it's pretty demanding. It's do or die every year, especially for France. And so I was really committed to be part of that team. And honestly, I created a lot of great things over that span of years. And was not always easy with the NHL. I have to admit, but I made some friends for life with the national team, and we had some great times. Obviously, never won anything, but our wins were to compete against the best nation in the world.
I was going to say the wins were to get there in many years. It wasn't just that you had to be at the World Championships. It was that you had to help France qualify for the World Championships in a lot of years, and 2 Olympic Games as well. You mentioned 20 years. Obviously, there was a lot of fanfare around your last game against Slovenia at age 42, which is remarkable in its own right. But that means your first one was at age 22. What do you remember about being on the world stage at such a young age?
Well, that was a big stage for me. I didn't compete as I was not really, but props to the national team for throwing me in and see what I had to do to develop myself and be competitive at international level. Yeah, I mean, it was eye-opening experience at the beginning. Of course, at the end, it was a bit different. I was playing a bit more the important games. I was not playing against Canada and those big games, and it was good for the other goalie of the French national team to play those games. And actually, they did pretty good most of the time, and that's how I started too. And my goal was really to win those games against teams that we were a bit closer, and we wanted to win those ones.
I want to catch everyone up. Since you stopped playing in 2017, you've been coaching for the last 5 years in the Swiss League with Lausanne, who you finished your career with. So I want to get into sort of that transition into coaching from playing. But first off, let's go back. Second French player to ever play in the NHL, first one to win a Stanley Cup. Where does it start for you in terms of the sport and then the position and the passion you clearly have for it to have played it so long and continue working in it?
Oh, the passion started way early when I was in France. Me and my brother were very passionate about the game. We're playing outside, and we brought in friends and break everything on the streets and everything like that. So we were really like, major Canadians, hockey kids. And yeah, my brother is still in the hockey. I mean, we were, like I said, I'm still passionate about the game. But so I grew up in France and playing in a pretty good hockey city. We won a lot of championship when I grew up in the junior level, and I was fortunate enough to have my professional team in Grenoble to throw me in at 19, I guess, or something like that. And again, I wasn't perfect at the beginning, but I ended up. We ended up winning the championship, and after that, I had opportunity with the national team. Like I said, then I ended up playing in Switzerland, and then obviously things got eat up a little bit more when you play in a better championship. And I was probably a better athlete too. I had a first-time goalie coach. It's not that long that I never had a goalie coach until I was 22. So it's kind of crazy when you think of now kids have a goalie coach when they start at 10 or 12 now. So.
Well, that's why I wanted to ask you. I was curious about that background because it was, in a country where, goaltending coaches weren't as common back then anyways, but in a country where hockey was not necessarily the primary sport, without that coaching at your disposal, how'd you get better? Like, did you watch other goalies within the French Pro League? Were you watching any NHL guys? Were there guys you looked up to? And at what point do you go from just playing the game to maybe mimicking other goalies? And just walk me through how you got to that level being self-taught for the most part.
Yeah, I think it was watching the other goalie. Honestly, it was only that. And so it was we had a chance. We had some pretty good goalies in my hometown. Well, not as good as the NHL level, but still, I learned a lot watching them. And then in the 90s, we had a chance to see some NHL games in France. That was also a big eye opener. I went to the Pee Wee tournament, stuff like that, where you start looking up to the Patrick Roy and. At that time, it was a big revolution in the hockey goalie world with the, François Allaire system and those things. I was raw talent. I was talented, obviously, for my country anyway. But that put a bit of structure into the game. And the other thing I have to say is that I went I think it was 96, so I was 21. I went to the François Allaire camp in Switzerland. And that changed a lot of my way of approaching how to play, how to be structured within the game. Obviously, still being able to sprawl and put the extra effort in, and the ASIC style was at that time. So I was a bit of combine of this, but at least I could get up on my good leg and stuff like that, and think about those things that made sense at the time.
And would that have been your first exposure to it? Like you said, the Allaire camp. And it's funny. I mean, speaking of Switzerland, Jonas Hiller, I would just happen to find a quote that he sent me the other day because I was reworking on a story about Allaire and about his impact in the game. And I found a quote from Jonas basically saying, without Allaire in Switzerland, there are no Swiss goalies in the NHL. I don't know if that's a bit of an overstatement, but the impact that he had with those camps in the summer, you saw it firsthand.
Yeah, and I think that camp in '96, I don't want to be mistaken, but I think I know David Ebischer was with me because we talked about this. Martin Gerber was there, and I think Jonas might have been there, or maybe the year after. So 3 guys that someone the Stanley Cup, and Jonas had a hell of a career in the NHL. So it's pretty amazing. I think he helped them a lot to go across the ocean, but still, I mean, it was pretty funny when you talk about when we see each other here in Switzerland that the background was the same. We had different age at the time, but he certainly did a lot for those guys and myself.
You talked about things like proper leg recovery, getting up off the right leg. How big an adjustment was it? Like, to be at that age, to have played on instinct for so long, and then to have all those elements, was it a tough jump? Or in some ways, was it easier to learn it later than maybe, like, can you see the positives in getting it later in life as opposed to when you were, like you said, like kids these days, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, they get a lot of technical instruction?
Well, it's a different view. I think now, I think it's good that the kids have it now, but they should probably work on the stuff we were working at the time, which is like desperation saves, or like the extra effort that you got caught sometimes, obviously. And for us, it was the other way around. We were always caught, so we were only working on this.
Well, but if you're always caught, that means you got to find a way to recover, right? You sort of learn things on your own a little bit about how not to get caught as often, I would imagine.
That's what I mean. Yeah. So I mean, those kids sometimes are like they work a lot on technique, and it's good for them also to fight a bit to react to some situations where it's not supposed to happen. But no, I think the sooner is the better. But yeah, I mean, it was I had to think about it when I was in the net back then. I was old enough to have get used to a certain way of playing, and it was an adjustment that wasn't easy for me.
So from that camp and the opportunities that your success in the French League opened up, you end up going to Switzerland to play pro. Had you started to think about the NHL back then, or was it not till you arrived in Switzerland that sort of started to become an option? Was there a point where a career on this side of the pond was realistic to you?
No, honestly, and not at all. Like, I was trying to compete in Switzerland. I was an import, and I was being year to year, up like goals, basically trying to be the best I could during that time. But again, I had a chance to be with Tom Edican, Canadian goalie coach, who was there with me, and we had a great relationships, and he actually opened my eyes on the fact that maybe I should think about the next level, and I was a bit naive. I thought it was bigger level for me I was not good enough. But yeah, he opened my eyes a lot. We worked a lot, and it happens actually.
Now, it happens in a way that, the rules have changed, but back then you could still be drafted at age 26 because I did a little double take because I've forgotten
Yeah.
how much the rules have changed. I saw 2001 draft and I did a little math and I'm like, he was 26 years old. What was that like? What was that experience like? Were you aware of the possibility, or did you just all of a sudden get a call like, hey, the Los Angeles Kings draft you? What do you remember of being drafted into the NHL?
So yeah, in Switzerland, we won the championship my first year, and we ended up in the final the next 2 years. Had some great years there. Our team was great too. And then some scout came a bit to see what was going on in Lugano and why, and the word spread a little bit. So yeah, I mean, I knew it was some possibility in 2001 that I would eventually get something out, but I was not looking up for that. Actually, I was really, like I said, I was always been a day-to-day guy. I try to get better every day and not look forward to things, and that worked great for me. And so Tom called me in the summer, and I was in Lugano home working in the summer. And he said, "Hey, you've been drafted by the LA Kings," and I was like, "Yeah, okay, well, I didn't know what it meant for me, And then I went there in a prospect camp, and yeah, I definitely wanted to be part of that for sure.
You talk about that mindset, that day by day mindset. As much as, it doesn't seem, no matter how many big picture questions I throw at you, it comes back to that. Is there a really good lesson there, Cristobal, for all goalies, for young goalies, that, about the importance of focusing on the task at hand, whether it's the next shot in a game or what you have to do each day to get better, rather than getting caught up in the big picture?
Well, it's not always easy. It's a process that you have to sometimes go back to it, but especially now the kids, they want always more, and I think it's a pretty good thing for them to keep them in the day to day and not look up for the next day. You have to go through this day to get better, and I mean, it worked great for me. My kids are playing goalie. I work a bit with the kids here in Lausanne, and that's something for sure I insist on. And even for players, I think it's not specific for goalies. It's a good way of approaching development.
Interesting that, like, we see a lot of kids have to learn techniques, like different tools and mechanisms to help keep them in the moment. It sounds like it comes quite naturally to you. Were there any points along the way in your career where you had to remind yourself, or where other people helped remind you about the importance of that, and ways that you found to not let your mind look too far ahead, to stay in the moment?
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, I think after the year after I was drafted in 2001, I spent the year after in Lugano, and that was a struggle year. I was my mind was a bit in LA, and what am I gonna do next? And it happened to me. I think also my first year in Chicago when I signed that big deal. It was it's a mental thing. It's really a mental thing. Even if you want to have that process, sometimes you get caught in thinking of especially those times where you get drafted. You think you might have a chance to go there, and you have to play there, and you forget a bit of the importance of the day to day. So yeah, it happens to me for sure.
Yeah, any lesson, like any great life lessons that you can pass along to help other kids? Were there any techniques that you used, or was it just more trying to focus yourself? Because I do think, and not to dwell on it too much, but I think, next shot or staying in the moment might be the easiest thing to do in every activity. And whether it's life or sports, sometimes the hardest thing to actually achieve. Easiest thing to say, hardest thing to achieve.
Well, I think it worked for me most of the time, but those years it was really a struggle to really keep doing that. I think in Chicago it took me a few months to really a bit let go on the contract, and just play the game and have fun with it. And in Lugano, I don't know, but sometimes you're not playing well, and it's even a bigger struggle, and it spins a little bit, spins and coaching and confidence, and there's other stuff than just yourself, obviously, when you're part of a team.
Yeah, you come over, play a couple of years with the Kings. What was the biggest adjustment? What were some of the influences? Like you talked about the influences over there in terms of getting goalie coaching late. Now you're in the NHL at a time actually where, it's kind of hard to believe now because it doesn't feel like it was that long ago, but not everybody had a goalie coach. Not every team had, goalie coaches in the minor leagues. How did it compare for you coming over, and what were some of the toughest or biggest lessons?
Well, it was the competition. When you come for camp, there's 6, 7, 8 goalies first week. And it's really up to, I'm going to have to show those guys that I'm better than them. I have to show the coach. You have to do everything to show that you belong and you're better than the other guys, with all respect to the other guys, of course. But and then, the goalie coach, my first year was not too much of an effect because I was really down in the minors and then a bit up at the end of the season. So, it was more of just a battle to get back in the NHL and try to be the best you can. I think that was the thing that really struck me when I came in LA my first year.
It's interesting. You talk about having to make an impression and show that you're better than them. And yet the other part about this position that is generally true is trying harder isn't always the best recipe for success. Sometimes if you try too hard as a goalie, things can go the wrong way. Did you have to find that balance, especially in that training camp environment where you want to prove yourself, and yet you still have to let the game and the puck come to you?
Yeah, I've been, you know me pretty well. I was always a bit laid back in the net, but just it was also, being ready for every practice, more like that than, trying to do too much. But
being a pro.
Yeah, exactly. Make sure I was ready mentally and physically to compete at the camp, and it worked well. I made a good impression. I get sent down in the minors, and the same process happened for me in the minors. We had Bruce Boudreau back then, and Travis Scott was the other goalie with me, and they gave us a 20-game warning. Who is the best after will eventually play more and being called up. So it was a different system for me, for sure. It was back to square zero for me. In Europe, I had a small name, and back there I was a nobody. So it was do again, start at zero, and it was great. You need to be humble and start over and show everybody what you can do.
You mentioned, that being a pro, preparation, like battling just by being prepared every day. Is that a lesson you have to pass along now as a professional goalie coach? Like, is that part of the process when you've got young prospects coming up? And what would you outline as the keys if say you had a young goalie coming into Lausanne for the first time? What would be some of the things you emphasize to them because we hear that phrase a lot, being a pro? What does it mean to you, and what would you tell them to achieve that?
Well, I think it's not always easy for them to understand what it takes now. Especially, it's much more demanding that in the 90s or early 2000s, goalies are well prepared athletes now. That's the first thing I would say. Especially how the game is going, it's faster and faster. So they need to be really top shape to be able to follow the game. And then it's all the little thing before practice. Make sure your body is ready, and then you go for an hour full tilt, and then you reset, and you have time to rest your body. But yeah, I mean, juniors in Switzerland, they play a lot of games too, so it's pretty good lesson for them to handle the charge of playing a lot of games. But so that's what, and then what we talk about, just the daily basis, be better every day. I think it's something, and if there is something in the game that they feel like they should work on, then work on that. Make sure they're technically aware, and then I think it's a battle when you come to the game.
That preparation and getting ready, we've seen over the years, like there's so many different routines that guys have. You said yourself, you were really laid back, but we can see guys with, whether it's juggling, warming up the body, warming up the eyes, warming up the brain. Sometimes those little things, they add them over their career and it can become too big. Was that ever an issue for you? I'm guessing not for you, but have you ever seen that with other goalies where there can be too much preparation, they can become consumed by it, and maybe even worn out by it? Have you? Is that something you've ever come across with some of your young goalies that you had to say, hey, like, be like me, relax?
Yes, absolutely. I've seen that. It's tough because for some of them, it's a way of being secure. And I think if they don't do it, if you do the same routine every day, it's gonna make them, feel secure. And it's good, don't get me wrong, but when it's too much and you add up things every time you want to, there's a line there. I think there's a line where you have to do something that makes sense. And if you don't do it one day, it's not going to be the end of the world. You've been practicing the whole week or, the whole year for a purpose. And that's where you did your job. It's not the day of the game that's going to change something. That's how I see it a bit.
Kind of like preparing for a test when you're in school, right? If you're ready, you're ready.
Exactly. You don't prepare the same day when you go for a test.
See, now the one test I don't think anyone can prepare for is being goalie for the Montreal Canadiens. You get traded to Montreal. I mean, the history of that franchise, you know Allaire obviously already through your work in Switzerland, but whether it's Dryden or Plant, I mean, Waugh, the names that are associated with the position in that franchise. Did you feel any of that pressure at any point? Was, as much as you're just going there to be a goalie, were you aware of it?
I was very well aware of it because I was injured my first few months during the lockout in Germany. I injured my knee, so I was watching all the games from the press box, and I was getting ready with Rolly Melanson on the ice, and I get a very good taste of what is it to be a Montreal Canadiens during that time. And it was great for me, honestly. I really enjoy, feeling that atmosphere and feeling what it feels to be a Montreal Canadian. I was at the stage of my career where it was pretty important for me to be good. And honestly, as weird as it sounds, I didn't have any pressure. I was just there to play as good as I could for probably the best NHL team or historic wise. I mean, and I enjoy every second of it. So that was funny. There's not a lot of guys that can say that, but I think the team was, average, and we're competing for a playoff spot, and so expectation were, average also, and there was no expectation on me. So yeah, all those things, made me just play the game for the best NHL team.
It sounds like there's some lessons there in terms of how you approached it and the mindset. I'm curious what you recall of your work. I mean, now as a goalie coach with Rolly Melanson, a coach I had the pleasure of watching work here in Vancouver for a number of years. Attention to detail, getting guys ready with drills that made them feel good about, for games especially. What are your memories? What did you take away from your time with Rolly? Is there anything you still apply as a goalie coach now from that time?
Yeah, a lot. We can go back to that after, but I use a lot of things from Rolly. First, when I was able to practice in Montreal, he said to me, you're not big enough. But you're gonna have to play big. You're gonna have to play bigger." So we work a lot on the posture and the ways for me to take the net away and play much bigger, higher stance, stuff like that. Some stuff that would keep my upper body a bit more straight, and the leg work. He was really big on on playing on feet and yeah. So it was tough, but it was good that we had a few months to work on it, and he helped me a lot. He was a great guy too, and we had a good relationship with Wally.
It's just, I mean, it's so funny now, like 6 foot. It's hard to even get drafted in the NHL at 6 foot now, as we know. But when you talk about playing bigger, I think people outside the position who maybe don't understand it, they always think that means being aggressive, being further out in your crease. And so I find it fascinating to hear you talk about, even back then, it was more about your posture and how you held yourself and how you presented yourself to the shooter. Because I know one of Rolly's rules, at least later on when he came into Vancouver, was about not being too aggressive, about staying in the blue ice as part of your foundation.
Yeah, the key for that is you need to have a good tracking, because when you can't track and if you play a bit deeper, especially in the NHL, shots are too good. But it was great for me that the staff, or at least Rolly, was saying to me, "Yeah, if you get beat sometimes up higher on a shot, we'll live with it." You know, what we don't want is you sprawling around and having tap-ins and empty nets all over, and those kind of things. So it was great, for me to have that. The coach was backing me up on this and being able to really play that way. I'm a big believer in this now, and also now for my goals to play a bit deeper on the outside, not over challenging, but challenging at the right time, of course. And yeah, my tracking again, I think my tracking was pretty good. So I was a pretty good candidate to play that way.
The trade to Washington and then finishing up in Chicago, some of the other voices that you got along the way was part of the process. It's one of the things we see with guys when they change teams, new voice, new goalie coach. Sometimes they want you to play a different way. You have to sort of trust your foundation, but also be willing to try new things. What were some of the other voices in those years and what did they maybe add to your game as you evolved in the National Hockey League?
When in Washington, it was we were like fighting for a playoff spot and right into playoffs. So it was really games and
probably not changing much at that point, right?
No, not changing much, and it was great cooperation too. We really it was pretty open minded, And in Chicago, I had Stefan Huet. It was a bit more challenging for me because I was not playing as well as I should, but he was backing me up a lot. I mean, Stefan was pretty big on technique, but all the things you learn with the goalie coach add up. And I was listening and taking what was good in every which one of them, and so I was more of a complete goalie. That's why I think goalies get a bit more mature at a certain age, because they pick up and they know what's good for them. And so yeah, it was. I think Rolly was at the stage where he could help me a lot. After that, it was more like fine tuning, and obviously it was a great goalie coach I had along the way.
So now that you're goalie coaching, do you have to recognize, like, not just what you have as a goalie in terms of how they look technically, but where they are in their careers in terms of their maturity and how much to tinker, how much to suggest? Is that as much about the person and their experience as it is about just looking at the product between the pipes and how they play? Does that all sort of factor into those conversations?
Well, yeah, you have to know your goalies for sure. know their strengths and what they can improve. I have a pretty good example here. I have Tobias Stefan, who played a bit in the NHL and with Dallas, and he's 37. So I used my background when I was 37 playing, and you have to also think about doing the right thing. Maybe not as much as before, but make sure you do the right thing and get off the ice when you have enough. And those kind of things. And obviously, the younger they are, the more you can put inputs into their games. After a while, I think it's fine tuning and not changing them a lot. I think they've been playing well over their careers, and it's pretty tough to change, and you don't want to change them too much, actually.
After you go back and play like almost another 10 years overseas, or a full, pretty close to another 10 years. Was that transition back hard at all? Like different style of game, different approach? Did you have to continue to, the position seems like it's constantly evolving. Did you have to continue to evolve playing all the way to 42 beyond adjusting, getting off the ice?
Yeah. I was playing those world championship on big ice, probably closer to European hockey. So not a big adjustment, I would say. It's more the surrounding and what's around the clubs. But I was playing in Switzerland before the NHL, so I knew, I was not a newbie in that part. And I was in Freiburg for a couple of years, ups and downs. But when I went to Lausanne and played in Lausanne, I worked with Sébastien Beaulieu, who's now a goalie coach in Geneva. A Canadian guy, is very successful here in Europe, and he was great working with him. I have to say, I was able to keep a pretty high standard of the way I could play at a certain age, and that's why I try to do with my goalie, who's 37 now.
How have you seen the game change? Like, I know there is a different style, as you said. It's probably a little more pass happy, over the pass, a little more east west, and yet in the NHL they talk all about east west too here. Like, the game is so dynamic, side to side for goaltenders. How have you seen it evolve in terms of how you coach it, how you teach it for goalies, and where are we headed? Like, what's the next step?
Well, I think you see a lot of more NHL going to the European, hockey now, with the passing and less hooking and so much skills. Like, it's really amazing the skill level in the NHL and the shots. Like there's that's great hockey. I'm pretty amazed by the level of the NHL now. In Europe too, I have to say we have pretty good players. Of course, they have a downside to their game. That's why they're not in the NHL. But it's not easy. It's not easy. It's the game is different here, I have to say, because it's more of a attack. You're either attacking or defending. The ice is so big that when you don't have the puck, you really have to, almost go back. There's less forechecking, a bit less forechecking, and less errors. So it's attack, defense kind of stuff. On the power play, you can see the same tendencies as the NHL, a lot of passing and through the box and stuff like that. So I think for North American and European, the standards are the same, and the direction of goaltending is heading the same way in that matter.
When you talk about that direction, it kind of reminds you of what you talked about with Roley on the skates and beating plays that way. Is that what you see now too?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's not so much as sliding. You can't slide. They're gonna pick you off the pads going the wrong direction, and now it's really being able to beat the pass and also your arm reacting. And that's why the goalies are better athletes. Also, they need to be really, really top shape to react and moving, and it's it's pretty demanding when you see the quality of the players now.
As a coach, we hear a lot too now, in addition to the need for beating plays on the skates and, like you said, not sliding too much. We hear a lot about patience. Patience on your edges in terms of not committing down before you move, patience off the release. How do you, I'm curious, because I think patience is something that, remembering back to watching you play, that I think would have been a strong attribute for you, was a big part of your game. How do you coach that? How do you teach it? How do you get a goalie to, other than telling them, because we hear it a lot, right? Just stand up longer. Real easy to say, real hard to do. How do you teach patience?
Well, it's a bit of being student of the game, knowing when the guys what are the guys' option, and it's pretty tough to teach. I have to say, it's one of the hardest thing to teach, because it's also a gamble. Sometimes you don't want to get beat through the 5-0 because you're too patient, right?
Right.
So on the same talk, I think I was beat a lot through the 5-0 because I was playing games a bit.
Well, it's funny because I had this discussion with a goalie coach recently, and he said that sometimes you have to, as a goalie coach, sometimes you have to have that fight in the coach's room, because it does go through the 5-hole or the guy doesn't get to the ice. But if you're going to yell at them and insist that nothing goes through them, the expense of that will be patience. So that sometimes you have to live with that. Like you said, just like Rolly said, sometimes pucks are going to go in here. If we're going to insist that they stay patient, sometimes those pucks might go in along you. Is that part of the process? Understanding that there's always give and take, and this might be something we can live with every once in a while if it gets us more patience everywhere else.
I think the role of the goalie coach is to understand why is the goalie letting a goal or making a save, and it's pretty tough for coaches to understand that part, of course. And yeah, for sure, it's our job to explain or let them know why this happened. And I mean, I've never really have a fight with the coaches, to be honest with you. Of course, there's some arguments and stuff like that, but yeah, I mean, I hope it's not going to come too much, but we're here for that, for sure.
Yeah, no, I didn't mean like a fight. Like I meant more like you have to battle and show them, hey, like, because that cliche, it became a cliche, right? Nothing through you. And sometimes that can create a bit of a tense blocking mentality, I guess is what I meant.
Yeah, well, nothing through you for sure. I mean, the coach are always going to say that's and the goalie coach too. I mean, it is true. You don't want to have anything through you for sure. If there is a passing option and then you really try to be patient and you get beat by a quick shot 5-0, that can happen for sure. On clean shots, no option, that's a different situation. Of course, I'm going to be, and probably goalies knows he should have it or stuff like that. So most of the times you don't really have to discuss that with the goalies because they know. Yeah.
The last part of that is like the situations, and you talked about patience and teaching. It's about anticipating and reading. My last question for you, that reading of the game, I guess, would have come somewhat naturally to you because you weren't overcoached at a young age. You had to learn to read the game and battle. For goalies that might maybe not do it as well now, can you teach that? Can you teach anticipation and reading the game? Can you use video and scenarios to help them become more aware? Or do some guys just have it?
Well, I think you can. I wouldn't say teach it, but you can have drills where there is different options for players. You can also make players sell you something and involve a pass. It shouldn't be a pass where it's a tap in, but maybe a bit wider or a bit further away from the net that the goalie has a chance to react to it. But position of the stick, the eyes of the player, position of the puck, and stuff like that. You can actually talk to them and maybe let them understand a bit that the position of the puck is going to decide a bit what are the options for the players. of course, and taking information, always taking information, make sure you know where the guys are on the ice, lefties, righties, and stuff like that. But it's a long process. The more they play, the more they learn, and feedbacks and stuff like that can help for sure.
How old are the kids, and how did they talk you into playing goalie?
My kids?
Yeah, you said they were both goalies. You said your kids were goalies. I was surprised because a lot of goalies don't let their kids become goalies. How did it happen to you?
I didn't want them to be goalies, but I told the first one. I told him, "We'll see when you're going to turn 7." And the day of his birthday, he said, "Well, okay, can I go now?" So I was. He really wanted to do that. So they have to do what they love, and they actually love it. So I'm happy for them that they can do their passion.
But you were so laid back as a goalie. Is it a little harder to be laid back as a goalie parent?
It's harder. I have a lot of respect for my parents now, for sure.
I love it, and I'm sure they're proud. And such a big moment coming up in May, Cristobal. Congratulations again on a remarkable career, on blazing a trail for other goalies from France and other players from France, and clearly having a passion for the position because you're still involved in it. Thank you so much for sharing that with us today. I know our audience is going to love this, and I appreciate the time. It was good to catch up.
Thanks for having me, Kevin. Always a pleasure.
I was kind of hoping that you'd throw in some French, Woody. Do you have the range?
Je ne parlez-vous le français?
Oh, that's pretty good. I'll give it.
No, exactly.
Oh, Hutch,
yeah.
The most judgmental Hutch has ever been right there.
Yeah, and all I can do is like fake the accent well enough that people think I know how to speak French, and I actually don't. So, but it's fun to sit here and judge Woody. I do it all the time.
He's either got a pee goalie dance guy.
What do we got going on the on the website right now? When we're perusing In Goal Mag.
Well, we'll have soon Thomas Milic, the interview from last week. Actually, by the time people listen to this, hopefully it'll be up. Just working on it right now. We talked about the way he uses the overlap, the way he flattens it out into more of a panda, the success he had with it at World Juniors. So he walked through some video of that. That's coming up soon. Latest pro reads was Scott Wedgwood, a guy who continues to have success with the Dallas Stars, coming off a shutout as we publish that one. So yeah, there's just that steady flow of things that will make you better as a goaltender up at ingoalmag.com. Spent some time with Dustin Wolf yesterday. Didn't get as much video as I would have liked, but we'll be catching up with him soon for some more pro reads. We don't normally and this isn't by design in terms of we only cover the NHL snottery. We just have more access to NHL goalies. So we haven't taken pro reads into other venues, but after doing the one with Milic, and it was more of a technique versus pro reads thing, but there was game footage in there. I think we're going to hit up Wolfie. Guy's dominating the American Hockey League again for a second straight season, coming off basically his true rookie season last year, and he wins the Goalie of the Year award. He's having another great one this year down there. I've got access to the AHL account. I'm going to dig up some footage. We're going to get him on a pro reads too.
My buddy Darren Elliott, the Olympian from 1984, National Hockey Leaguer, Southpaw, just got to watch Dustin in person for the first time a couple of times last week. Came away really impressed.
I had a goalie coaches over here for the first time from pro leagues overseas, working in the American Hockey League, and that's the one. That's pretty much a universal thing. Hey, who watching around the league and now in the league, who impresses you? And the first one that stands out all the time, he's like, "Oh, that Dustin Wolf." Yeah.
Hutch, you done scraping your crease?
Sorry, I'm just stuck here on Winnipeg goalie dance.
Have you got down the rabbit hole?
So I'm watching everybody. It's still on. I'm on Connor Hellebuck right now. And, not only can I enjoy Connor scraping his crease, I'm thinking I did those Winnipeg third jerseys with the blue jersey and the red pants. I like that. So, yeah, I'm just having fun. You guys carry on.
We may see him for a week.
No, it is funny how many different ways there are to scrape your crease and how many 100%. Different routines there are and what guys do first and the different rituals that go into the start of a period for guys. This has brought a whole new window to the position.
I want to talk to some young guy and find out why they still even do it, because I did it way back in the day because, well, two reasons. I sharpen my skates once a year. So if I didn't scrape up the crease, I would just sort of slide into the corner. So I needed something to grab. And then you want to get rid of all that water too, because it was going to soak into the leather gear, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think now it's just warm yourself up. I don't know. Anybody who's younger than 30.
Okay, so
there's
a good question here. Maybe I need to start looking at this, because are there any guys in the show that don't? I mean, I'm at every Canucks game. I need to start having a quick look, because anybody just want that fresh ice slide as much as you can. And to bring this back to, we started talking about in-goal content. Don't forget Carter Hart, Dustin Wolf, they have got a routine that ends with a little jump. So when we talk about hype level and getting yourself set for locked in for a period, if you're an In-Goal Magazine subscriber, make sure you go back on the website and search up Carter Hart and Dustin Wolf and the word jump, and you'll see both of those stories in terms of their crease movement patterns heading into a game, first period, and then each and every subsequent period, and why they do that.
I'm going to overthink this.
Some gear slides better on fresh ice, and some gear slides better on scraped up ice. So that would also be interesting.
I think
what a rabbit
most
hole.
gear should slide on scraped up ice the best, because that's what you're going to be playing on the most, right?
Should.
So maybe that's why you still scrape it up a little. Otherwise, you might be in that corner.
So the interesting thing to me too here is, and this is one factor that a lot of people are probably like, well, hey, like NHLers play on perfect ice. No, they don't.
Yeah, no.
No, they don't. Here in Vancouver, where you would assume, although the rain plays a big role in this, but here in Vancouver, where we used to have really good ice, it's really not good anymore. I don't know where it ranks amongst the league, but they need to spend a bunch of money on a new dehumidifier, and they haven't yet. And I am hearing visiting goalies constantly talking about how soft the ice is, to the point some of them are having to change up their regular sharpenings. And I would be curious how often that happens around the league. And as I say, I would be curious to know. It's like, hey, guess what? Everybody's going, you're the guy in the room, dummy. Start asking the question. So I think I'll start doing that, because I have heard a couple guys come in, and I don't know if this is just because the ice here has gotten to that degree of bad, but they've talked about having to change their sharpenings. I wonder how common that is around the league. So that might affect how much you scrape up your crease. If it's just super soft, you don't want to dig in too much.
That's interesting, because that reminds me two things. I just want to hop on here real quick. I remember from the Eli Wilson Carey Price day, Carey talking about how Montreal's trainer would have different sharpening levels depending on the building they were going into.
Pop those
so that
blades
was something
in and out,
dialed
right?
into. Yeah. So that is something that for sure happens around the league. And that reminds me that when we were at the Carey Price day for the first time, that is when we met Mr. Peter Martin of Pro Skate Goal in Calgary. And we need to thank Peter for being the guy that sort of connected us with Cristobal Huet. I know, Woody, that you've known him for a long time, but Pete sort of opened the door for us as well. He's been a good friend to the show for a very long time, and he was Cristobal's playing partner in Switzerland.
And Cristobal will tell you that he cost Pete 2 championships in Switzerland. When Pete first went over there, Pete was on the opposite bench when Cristobal won the championship. Then Pete ended up on the same team, and they lost in the final. So it sounds like that might be a running joke between the two of them. But as Cristobal said, and as we know firsthand, he always has time for Pete. One of the great guys around the game, one of the great guys in the goalie world. And thanks again to Pete for helping facilitate that interview. You're right, Hutch. I did know Cristobal a little bit, and turns out I actually had a contact for him. But whether he would have answered my call is a question that we'll have to leave up in the air. There was no hesitation. Took seconds after Pete reached out so we could get him on to congratulate him for the IIHF Hall of Fame honoring. So thanks to Pete again for always being such a good friend of In-Goal Magazine. We appreciate it, buddy.
I just typed Huet's name into my phone. Guess what happened? You guys aren't going to believe this.
You got it too.
No.
What's that?
No, I don't have his number. I just spotted it. I'm not nearly as connected as you. Not a chance. But Pete, I love you. That's the method to our rambling is we get all the way around it. I don't have anybody's number. Thanks to Cristobal Huet, Cam, you, the listener, for being on this journey. Love it. And send us your crease movements or what you do to scrape the crease, or why you do it, and what your routine is. And follow that. What's that account?
Winnipeg
There we
Blue,
are.
yes.
There we are. I guess I haven't heard your broadcast voice in a while.
And Stuart Skinner's mustache.
And Stuart Skinner's mustache. And if you want to contact us, how do you get in touch with us?
Info@ingoldmag.com. Oh man, I haven't
No,
done
you
that
haven't
one
done
in
it
weeks.
in weeks. We're talking months.
We got to hear
Yeah.
it.
Months?
Yeah, give us the broadcast voice.
The best place to contact us is on all of our socials. Leave your comments, but you could also reach out to podcast@ingoalmag.com.
Thanks for listening. Talk to you next week.
I so want to fill in for Darren on a Vegas broadcast one day. I'm just auditioning my voice.
You're hired. Talk to you next week.